Well, the reason I'm seeking the office of sheriff is I really believe that I'm the most qualified person for this job. I've been number 2 in command at the sheriff's office for the last 6 years. I have the on-the-job experience and the knowledge necessary to run the sheriff's office. It's an $18 million business with a lot of liability, a lot of complexities built into it, and it's a job that's going to take somebody that can immediately take over. In this type of job, in this type of environment, and the world we're living in, there's no time for on-the-job training, and I won't need it. I'm literally ready to go today. So I believe I have the background, the education, the experience it's going to take to run the sheriff's office. I have the endorsement of the man that's been elected 5 times to the office that understands what it takes to be the sheriff, and therefore I believe that I'm the most qualified person for the job.
Is there anything that came up yesterday specifically in the forum that you'd like to...
The issue about the undersheriff, which was the headline in the paper today, I want to follow up that I believe I mentioned it yesterday, but maybe didn't follow up at the end, that the sheriff changing my job title to undersheriff is not a new one. There's been a previous undersheriff at Sangamon County, and many of the large counties in Illinois have the title of undersheriff also. Some of them have an undersheriff and a chief deputy. This is simply what the person in charge, in this case Sheriff Williamson, decides to, how he decides to structure his command staff. The change was made simply to reflect my job duties. As I said yesterday, my predecessor had not done what I was doing, and Sheriff Williamson, in his wish to develop staff, had simply began delegating duties to me and accompanying me to the county board committee meetings, the county board meeting itself. And allowed me to sit into contract negotiations. All this is previously not done by the former chief deputy. And this was also his way of, again, developing staff so that if something happened to him, there's somebody immediately ready to step in and run the sheriff's office. And that's very important, and that's what I would do also as the next sheriff. And I said yesterday I would return the number 2 position to the title of chief deputy initially, because this person obviously would not have the experience that I have. However, I would continue to develop staff also. And if somebody were to meet those standards and I pick somebody that this is the person that could take over the sheriff's office, if something was to happen to me, then I would certainly consider returning that title to the undersheriff if I felt like that they had met the standards that I had set.
I wanted to follow up on the IA file discussion from yesterday a little bit.
Okay.
If I understood what you were saying, it sounded like the unsubstantiated complaints you would not be interested in releasing. Is that correct? Or am I putting words in?
No, that's the law right now. I have to release them. I just said that I did not like that part of FOIA.
Okay.
I'm mandated to release them, and we do release them when asked for. So it's something I have no choice on right now, and I'm very meticulous about following the FOIA laws, and I think we've done a great job of it. And I think we gave a package to Bernie today. If not, it's waiting for you. It's a very large one. We asked for an extension, but we didn't even take as long as you had approved us. So we do a great job of filling the FOIA. And that simply was the part about FOIA that I didn't like. The other part is inmates' FOIA requests. This takes up, Director Walton estimated about 30% of his day is spent on inmate FOIA requests. So there's parts about their FOIAs that I would like to see changed in the law, like their mug shots. That has nothing to do with their case. If it's their reports and they want something that reflects on their case, I'm happy to give it to them. But just asking for mug shots, it seems like a little bit of waste of time and money, and it's not necessary for their case.
Wouldn't you want yours if it was your situation? I mean, I can see where people could see that would be damaging to their reputation or something. Just because it seems like that doesn't take as long to produce as paperwork.
You mean the mugshot? Yeah. Well, it's not a matter of how long it takes to produce. Is it necessary? Because over time, if you look at the sheer amount of mugshots, now I realize that printer ink is not that expensive when you go buy one cartridge, but when you add them up over a year's time, and there's some inmates that have 20 or 25 mugshots, and they ask for all of them, and to me, it's just a waste of taxpayers' money for that when it has nothing to do with their case.
Why are they asking for them, do you know?
We can't ask. You should know that.
So you are saying that you would want to change, work, I assume, with the Sheriff's Association or by yourself to change the FOIA laws?
We have proposed language. We have language we've already working with the State's Attorney's Office in those 2 areas of unsubstantiated IA cases and inmates' FOIA request.
So in other words, I mean, in regular court files that we get to see over in court, if somebody is charged with something and then the case is dismissed, we can see what the charge was, we can see that it went to court, and we can see that a judgment was made, that nothing was there, but it's all on the record. You're saying that none of that should be on the record if it's an internal case?
If somebody brought criminal charges against you, there was probable cause. If you and I are neighbors and you dislike me and you call in a complaint on me every day for 2 years, that's a lot of cases that will be unsubstantiated that on the surface looks like there's a problem. Well, look, Jack Campbell had 700 and some odd cases filed against him, so that there must be a problem there, when really it may be something that you don't like me. So that is my problem with unsubstantiated cases. And again, I'm just saying what my opinion is. I follow the law, and the law right now says that we will release these cases, and we do.
Okay, and when you said you brought it to the state's attorney, so are you having them draft a proposed law to give to a legislator? Is that what you're doing?
I didn't do this. Our records director, who's our FOIA officer, he is working with one of our state's attorneys that's assigned to our office to help with FOIA. They are working on this language because they see the volume, especially with inmates, as being a problematic for them. So that's why they work together to draft language to propose to somebody. I don't know whether it's going to go to John Milheiser or they're going to try to find a sponsor someplace else. I'm not sure where it's going to go from here.
Okay, and just to be clear, you are saying that there should be no public record at all of any allegations that are not founded?
I think it needs to be reviewed.
But I thought you said you're getting language drafted.
Well, and that's just a draft language, and it didn't come from me personally. This is coming from the people that are FOIA officials.
So is that Mike Walton's idea to do this?
And it could have been the state's attorney that's working with Mike. The two of them, they showed it to me, what they had proposed, and I didn't have any objection to it because it made sense to me that in those two areas that it seems like that there's a difficulty there. And again, this is about taxpayers' dollars. This is about wasting, or this is about them spending most of their day on these type of requests. And again, we don't have a lot of requests for our IA files, so that's not, volume-wise, that's not a problem for us like the inmates are. This is more about, in this line of work, you get complaints. And again, ones that are substantiated, where there's discipline imposed, no problem at all. Somebody did something wrong, and we need to be held accountable for it. But when it's unsubstantiated, it seems a little bit unfair to the employee that had a complaint filed against them if there was no preponderance of the evidence to show that this happened.
What's the proposal about the inmates? Is it only pictures, or what are you saying?
I don't know that I can't recall. It's been a long time since I looked at the language. I can't remember the details of it, but it mirrors, I think, the Michigan law. Michigan has a FOIA law that disallows inmates. I don't know if it's all FOIA requests or just mugshots. I'm not sure which one it was, but it very similar to the Michigan law. Okay,
well, if you were an inmate and you wanted some information on a case, I mean, obviously we know there are jailhouse lawyers and they do a lot of, in state court also. But is it your opinion that inmates shouldn't be able to request information from your department?
No, that's not my opinion at all. It's about the mugshots more than anything else.
There was a bit of a discussion about training, or I'm sorry, taser training. And if I remember correctly, Wes brought up some standards that Taser International, I think, has, and then where the county is on that.
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk about that? How much training do you require? Is there more that can be done on tasers?
Well, Taser International requires 6 hours of training, the initial certification, and the recertification yearly. We require 8 hours on the initial certification, and along with receiving a Taser application to be able to carry the Taser. That's something that's specific to our department. Some of them do, some of them don't. That's individual. The recertification is 6 hours, and that's what we require also, at least 6, and there's times we go beyond that. And we also bought what we call Taser suits, and this allows 2 people to don the suits, and we give scenario-based training. And when we have deputies come in the door, they're given a scenario, and there's sometimes you have to do anything. There's sometimes that you have to tase somebody. Sometimes you have to go to deadly force. So again, we put our deputies really through the ringer here and force them to make a decision throughout. It's the whole gamut. It could be no force at all, clear up to deadly force, and again, you can actually deploy the Taser into these Taser suits, and the person doesn't receive the shock because the suit absorbs it. Tasers. Since I took over at the sheriff's office, it's down 80%. The usage. Our injuries, our workman's comp claims are down 30%. So what we're doing is working. Tasers are designed to be an equalizer for our deputies on the street as well as our correctional officers in the jail. So, and I believe if you get on Taser's website, you'll see that 60 some odd or maybe up to 80% of the agencies that employ the Taser have seen reduction in injuries to both suspects and officers alike. And that was our goal, is reducing injuries. And our workplace safety committee that was put together by our auditor, Paul Palazzolo, is the one that they actually receive grants for Tasers. They're telling our guys, they're telling me administratively, you need to encourage more use of the Taser because it's reducing your injuries down. You don't have to go hands-on with somebody. When you go hands-on, that's when the injuries happen. The Taser is designed to separate yourself from the problem. And the good thing about the Taser is that you receive a shock and then you get up and you're fine. So it's something that works for both sides, and I would definitely be in favor of continuing to use the Taser.
The city of Springfield had an incident last spring where they tasered a pregnant woman in one of the parking lots that was. And I was wondering, have you all examined any of your policies about tasering pregnant women? And did you convene? If you did you convene?
We train for that. We train for pregnant women, and we certainly try to avoid the midsection. We train to shoot for the leg a lot of times on the pregnant women. We really discourage the use of a Taser unless it's an option in lieu of deadly force. The problem is it'd be a secondary injury to a pregnant female, not the Taser itself. So we really discourage that taking a chance and having that type of danger. So we discourage that use, but we have to train for it because it would be in lieu of deadly force.
Secondary means you could fall down.
You could fall down, right? Just as we do with somebody near water, just as we do with somebody in a high place on a ledge or ladder. We always realize there's a possibility of a secondary injury, so we train for that during the yearly recertification.
You gave the number of hours yesterday that you have to train each year, and Les claimed that the hours that you actually train are less than that. Was he wrong?
I don't know where he got his numbers from. I know what we require, and I certainly will look into that and make sure that we didn't short this at all. I can't speak to what he was talking about. I had no idea what he was talking about.
Is there a limit on how many times your deputies can taser somebody? Like if they tase them and it seems to have no effect, and you keep going?
Until you neutralize that person. And there's times that you have to realize if this is not working, you need to go to something different. It's all subjective to that moment in time, that person. There are people now that have been tased on the street that realize that they can move and they can pull the barbs loose. And that, then you bring in a whole other options into play, whether it's pepper spray, a baton, and certainly up to deadly force if necessary.
There was some discussion of mental health people in the system. Does your training include mental health behavior and how to approach mentally ill people in order to not escalate a situation, or is that something you would work on?
Mental health, yes, we discuss it. Mental health mimics many other problems, whether it be somebody's high on drugs, they're drunk, they're angry. We don't want to force our deputies to make a street diagnosis about what's going on. Our job is to control the situation and control the person. Now, if we get there and we're talking to them quite a bit before there would be any force used, then we would probably begin to recognize the signs of maybe a mental illness, and we would handle the situation appropriately. But remember, if we need to take the person into custody, oftentimes it's for their own safety. And you may have to tase somebody just to get that person to custody because, again, we're going to have to go hands-on with that person to get handcuffs on them, maybe to take them to a mental facility or to the hospital for an evaluation. And either way, we've got to take them into custody. So we're trying to do it without causing any injury to them or our deputies.
And do you feel now there is sufficient resources for you to deliver people that you assume might be mentally ill so that they don't have to end up in jail, or is that a problem that
well, I know
needs
that
to be worked on?
I know that they're working on mental health court, which I'm a big fan of. If we can divert people away from the correctional facilities that have mental problems, then I think we're all better served, and them especially. People with mental health issues are problematic for us in the jail, and we are always looking for ways to deal with them. Sometimes we have been forced to keep people longer in custody that have been deemed unfit for trial. And yet there was no beds for them at the different facilities around the state, so we have to keep them. And oftentimes they will fight with our correctional officers because of their condition. I believe that the stakeholders are doing all they can to deal with this. I think we deal with it as well as we possibly can, but it's not a perfect world, and sometimes people end up in our custody that really they're better served in a mental health facility.
Are you part of the task force that is developing the mental health court?
I was on the initial meeting, and I spoke in front of the entire group, and there's been a second one since then. I had to delegate because I had to go to a debate yesterday. Otherwise, I would have been there. But no, we will continue to be to serve on that committee, and do all we can to offer up our advice, because we have to house them in the jail. So it's important that we're included in these conversations.
What is your estimation? What percentage in the jail are mental health behavior? I mean, just on your own observation, because we're not there, so.
Anecdotally, talking to our staff down there, 30% of serious mental health issues, and maybe up to 60% with other types of more mild ones, but people that are hard to just hard to control and deal with sometimes. We've got mental health experts that come into the jail, and we have about 200 contacts a week, is what they're telling me. So our mental health professionals talk to these people, and maybe multiple times a day, and each one of them is a contact. So up to 200 contacts a week, they're telling me.
And what's your capacity there now?
Well, the capacity is about 314. We're running, right now, we've been running very close to capacity. We've been staying about 300. Our classification capacity is about 286, which means that we have to be able to classify for gang members and people that can't be together. Maybe they're co-conspirators, and we have to keep them apart from each other. So in a perfect world, we would be in the 280s.
And what is the status of medical care? I know, there was a really bad situation a few years ago where a guy had some abdominal problems and ended up going to the hospital days later and died. We just saw a new lawsuit about a guy with an infection who he's claiming that he wasn't taken for real treatment for like 5 days of complaining and caused permanent damage. We don't know. Who's your medical provider, and when do you determine that it's worth it to take somebody to a different facility or to, I guess, an in-house clinic? What's the situation?
Well, ACH is our medical provider, and we actually.
How long do you have them? Did they come on after that last case or something?
We've had them for many years now. I want to say about 5 years. That's estimate on my part. We actually just increased our medical care coverage from 7 a.m. until about 10 p.m. 7 days a week. So we increased the weekend hours. So, and on top of that, we have doctors that are constantly on call. So when you ask me when we make the decision that they need to go, that's up to the doctor and the LPNs that are there. They make the determination. And again, that's why we contract with them. We're in the business to house inmates in the jail. We're not medical professionals. So that's why we contract with ACH and allow them to make the call. They make the recommendations, and we simply do the transporting.
Budget came up yesterday as well. Wes brought up wanting to bring back crime prevention, and when things had gotten tight for the sheriff's office previously, I believe that was one of the first things to go. So I would ask, how important is a crime prevention office for the sheriff's office, and what do you think about bringing it back?
Well, let me start with the budget. The budget, as I said earlier, this is an $18 million business. And my opponent is fairly flippant in his attitude about the budget. And I have heard him on the radio say that managing the budget is no big deal. And as I said yesterday, this is a business. And anybody that tries to run a household budget or a small business budget understands how important this is. There's a huge amount of liability that hangs over our heads every single day. The Sangamon County has a $100 million budget, and 18 of that is ours. So in other words, if the sheriff's office sneezes, the county catches a cold. Everything that we do affects everything in Sangamon County. And for my opponent to say that, it really reveals his lack of experience and lack of understanding about the budget. He also has talked recently about that we only use 10% of our training line item for corrections. Because of his lack of understanding of our budget, he simply scanned down through and looked for some money that wasn't spent. That money was $7,200 and some change, designed to send correctional officers to our PTI facility over in Champaign, Police Training Institute. It cost us $3,600 a person. We didn't hire anybody last year, so we didn't need to spend that money. We have a bottom line budget, so we're able to move money around, and we spent $700 out of that line item for something else, but we didn't need it. He simply doesn't understand what he's looking at. And I would think that the taxpayers, the voters out there, recognize that the person that's going to take over as sheriff has got to have the understanding of a budget and understand how important it is and how hard it is to manage. I would ask people, how many homicides are we going to have? How many weather-related incidents are we going to have? Just as people at home have to ask themselves the same question when we're managing our money. So this is part of the global view that I have of the sheriff's office. And the budget, managing the budget, is something that I was instructed to do back in 2007 when I came into administration. That was one of my first jobs, is that you're going to oversee the budget. You're going to start managing it and keep us informed. We have a comptroller at the sheriff's office. We are the only county agency that has a comptroller. That's how important our budget is to Sangamon County. So the county board has seen fit to it that they have somebody down there that we can have constant contact with, which I do on a daily basis. His office is 2 offices away from mine, and we talk every day about the budget. So it's something that is so vital in this day and age that we can't have somebody coming in here to run the sheriff's office that has that type of attitude towards the budget.
Well, I heard Wes talk about this on a radio interview with Kramer Show.
Mm-hmm.
He talked about how really most of the budget is tied up in salaries and equipment, and so you only get down to a very small percentage that's discretionary. And that's when he used the phrase, I think, that wasn't that big a deal, because it's really a small part of the budget that you have to work with, because so much of it is kind of set in stone just by the people you have and the cars you have, etc. So, are you still saying that? Because I think he would probably argue that he was just talking about the minuscule part of the budget that is discretionary.
I don't think so. This is all related. This is the huge, the 96 to 97% he's talking about. That's where you make it or break it. The 3 or 4% that you spend on paper and staples and coffee filters is not what's going to save your budget when you're talking about $18 million. This is understanding that just because your salaries are set by contract doesn't mean you have to manage for overtime, for homicides, for injuries. We have a lot of work-related injuries in law enforcement, and it's making sure that you understand that if you allow somebody to come in and work double time, how that affects you versus time and a half. There's a large picture, and his attitude, his misunderstanding of the budget is that he only has to manage 3 or 4%, and that is entirely not the case. I mean, you have to manage the other 96 or 97% because that's the huge bulk of your budget. So you can ask anybody that runs a business, and that's what this is a business. How hard is it to manage personnel? Every personnel cost is the largest number of any business's budget. So that is why you have to manage it, because that is 90% of your budget. So it sounds like you're sticking up for him, Bernie. I'm not sure if
I'm just raising the question.
Well,
because I'm putting it in the terms he put it in that I heard.
Well, again, this shows if he thinks that only managing that 3 or 4% will be his only job as the sheriff, then he is mistaken. And the people of this county need to understand that if that is his position going into this office, that things can go bad very quickly.
Do you have an overtime budget?
Yes.
What is it?
About $1 million.
And do you exceed it every year?
Virtually every year, because they don't hire employees. This is a county board issue, not a sheriff's office issue. We ask for employees, and they have time limits on when we can hire. They won't let us hire for a certain amount of time because every person costs more than overtime, and it's a frustration of ours with the county board. But we air our frustration with them, and they say, "Thank you very much. We'll let you know when you can hire." And we said, "Well, so you understand, we're going to go over on overtime." They said, "Fine, do your best to manage it." So that's what we do, and. So we're generally the personnel line item. We're very close to the budget, but on overtime we'll go over. And it's just again, it's all related to not having enough bodies.
So you use the hiring lag to cover the overtime?
Yes. And the hiring lag is the county policy is 30 days, but oftentimes we'll go years without hiring somebody. You mentioned crime prevention.
Yeah.
Yes, look, it's one of the programs that's very successful. It's community outreach. But that being said, we had to prioritize our money. And keeping your family safe is what's important to the citizens of Sangamon County. Certainly community outreach is important, but here's what's happened. When we had to disband crime prevention, Sheriff Williams and I took over that same community outreach. A lot of weekends, a lot of evenings, you'll see one or both of us out going to neighborhood organizations, to church groups, to schools, you name it, we go there. Senior citizen groups, we don't turn down anybody. If the sheriff or I can't go, we will delegate somebody else to go. Sometimes we'll have a deputy work in the street, say in Southtown on the south side of Springfield. We'll have them stop by a neighborhood association meeting just to say hi, is there anything we can do for you? So we continued this same program without having to pay the staffing that was in it. So I would love in a perfect world to have crime prevention back. But more importantly, if it was a perfect world, I would add staffing out on the street. I would add dirt detectives, our drug team and detectives to further combat the crime. Crime rates are down across the board. What we're doing is working. So I know we're prioritizing right now, and it's not a perfect world, and we've had to learn to do a little bit less with less, and yet our crime rates are still down. So I know that we've been successful and we've been efficient.
Citizens Efficiency Commission recently made a series of recommendations regarding county law enforcement. Do you remember that report at all?
Yes, parts of it. Mm-hmm.
Okay. One of the things that they discussed was the donut hole in Springfield,
Mm-hmm.
and that there's a lot of overlap between Sangamon County calls and Springfield calls, and often sheriff's deputies have to cover in Springfield.
Mm-hmm.
Can you elucidate us on that subject, and do you have any opinions on how that can be remedied?
Well, the Sheriff's Office doesn't really handle the calls for the city. We may show up initially on a response. Say it's a burglary in progress. We may have a car that's close because they're patrolling from one unincorporated area to the next, or the donut hole, and they may be close to a call in progress that comes through the city channels. We'll go there so we can initially try to catch the burglar. And the citizens don't care what uniform is wearing. The citizens just want help. So we're happy to help out. And the city will do the same for us in an emergency situation, as well as out in the county. You know, it could be one of the small villages responds out to an unincorporated part of the county until we can get there. So that's common in law enforcement. You asked about the efficiency study, and I think they did great work. And I think they made a lot of great recommendations, and I testified in front of that committee a couple times. And I think that I don't think you'll ever see a merger between the city and the county, not in my lifetime. I think it'd be very expensive, very difficult to accomplish something like that. However, we have already been approached, the Sheriff's Office has been approached by some outlying villages about taking over their policing 24 hours a day. And we provided some numbers for this village. We've not heard back from them. We currently contract with a small village to do 20 hours a week policing there. I think that, and I've said this before, that it's all the small villages like to have their own police forces, but they're very expensive. It's very expensive per individual. You have a lot of workman's comp, liability hanging over you, as well as civil litigation. So I think that, what's that? Yes. And I think that right now, from what I understand on the tax revenues, everybody's in pretty good shape. We're slowly creeping up in tax revenues. However, if there's another double-dip recession, I think you may see villages approaching the Sheriff's Office again to again say, can you take this over for us because we can't afford it anymore. We are not, and I say we, Sheriff Williamson and I have said this publicly also, and I will not, as the sheriff, go knocking on the door and ask to take over a police agency. If you come to us and say, we need help, we can't afford this anymore, we will sit down with you and provide numbers and options for you, but I'm not looking to build a kingdom. I'm simply there looking to protect the families of everybody in Sangamon County.
The report says that there's $60 million being spent on law enforcement in Sangamon County, and if you're only $18 million of that, there's a lot of money out there. Which do you have an opinion on whether that $60 million could be better utilized if there were a more efficient and effective system?
Well, I think there's duplication of service. I think that the if you're looking for a one-word answer is yes. That if we were to combine into one force in all the county, it would be the most efficient way to do it. But there's a lot of politics involved in this, and I don't think that will happen. I'm simply answering your question in terms of money. And I think factually that would be the answer is yes, you'd save money. But you have a lot of jurisdictions out there that they want that security force in their town, and they want to have that comfort of having it there. And I don't see very many of them ever coming to us and saying that we want you to take over unless they simply can't afford it. It will come down to affordability and tax dollars coming into play here if they ever come to us.
Which town do you provide the 20 hours a week?
Illiopolis.
Your own?
I live in Illiopolis.
Okay, so is that a contract for 20 hours, so they pay the county something for it?
Correct. They pay the hourly wage of the deputy, and then they pay for the fuel used during that tour of duty.
Okay, and are you able to say what other town is talking to you?
I can't say.
Okay. Anyway, just thinking of FOIA, would there be something if we asked you
Nope.
in particular?
There's no paperwork. This was an informal discussion.
Okay, that's fine.
How is the cold case load at the sheriff's office these days? And what are you doing to work on it?
We have a handful of cold case homicides, and when time allows, we'll let new detectives open up the files and take a look at them and just try to put new eyes on them. There's a couple of them that we are very certain that we know who did it, but there's no further evidence to prove it. But again, with having new eyes look at these, we're always hoping that we miss something, and it's not something we have manpower for, and that is the problem right now, is that we're very limited on the number of detectives that we have, so we're not able to open them up the way we'd like to.
Is there an opportunity there, do you feel, for like a metro, I don't know, cold case unit or something like that? I mean,
Absolutely.
The city, I think, has the same problem.
Absolutely, and you know, we were approached by a retired police official that asked if he could look into one of the cold cases, and we said absolutely. And this is something I think that, you know, I started the Statesman of Law Enforcement and brought together these former administrators, and maybe it's something that in their spare time, because they're retired, maybe it's something they would want to work on. And I think that'd be a great project for a lot of the officials in the area that have so much expertise to come together on a Saturday morning and take a look at this. And something I would love to propose to our statesman group and see if they want to do it themselves or if they would propose it to people that they have. We have nothing to lose at this point. We're trying to get justice for these families and for these victims. And, if we can get it done at no expense to the taxpayers, that would be the best deal for everybody.
What's your relationship with the coroner these days? There for a while, under previous administration.
Oh, we have a great relationship with Coroner Edwards. We have constant contact with her. One of our most recent homicides here on the south end of town, I talked to detectives on scene. Actually, I was on scene down there too, and they were just so complimentary of her and her staff. And talking to her afterwards, she returned the sentiments that these guys were just so great to work with. And we don't have a lot of homicides in Sangamon County, so we don't interact at those type of scenes. A lot of times it may be traffic crashes or other types of deaths that we see the coroner. But they have a great relationship back and forth. We trust their office, and they trust us.
The sheriff, there's been some criticism recently that the sheriff is not out there enough. He seems to have taken a step back. Is that fair criticism in your opinion? That
No.
He's not out there enough?
No, the sheriff is the sheriff. It doesn't matter where he's at. He's the sheriff. He makes the decisions. And what's been talked about there is simply it's staff development, as I said before. The sheriff, he's made very clear that he's identified me as the person that's best ready to take over the sheriff's office. He simply is doing what he feels is his job by the voters and the taxpayers out there to make sure that I am ready to go. He's literally a phone call away, an office away. He makes the final decisions on all these things. I make the recommendations, and we sit down and discuss back and forth the difficult issues we're dealing with, but he makes the final decision. I'll be very clear, he is the sheriff, and it doesn't matter what somebody says, that doesn't make it true. He's always been there. He's been there for 20 years. He's done a great job, and he does make the final decision.
How do you in your training ensure that race, sex, ethnicity, and other factors don't make an officer's behavior less than objective?
I don't know if I understand your question.
Do you think discrimination of any type is an issue that needs to be addressed in the training of police officers?
Well, I think it's discussed at the State Police Academy and things like that initially. I think we have no problem at all at the Sheriff's Office with discrimination, not across any category. I think that we do a great job of respecting every individual, no matter their race or gender or anything at all. And it's something that it's really something that's ongoing. We discuss it as the problem comes up in the media, maybe. The guys at roll call training will talk about an incident and ensure that they don't participate in that. So it's something that's very important, and it would be to me as sheriff that we do not engage in that. And we bring in an attorney for sexual harassment training at no cost to the taxpayers. I use one of our labor attorneys that we have a contract with, and we do roll call training about sexual harassment. So the guys are already on the clock, and the ladies, they're all on the clock, and they give the sexual harassment training. And this is done every year, and then they fill out a form, and we find out if they have been sexually harassed in the last year. So we keep the documentation so we can go back and review it. And if somebody marked yes, they've been sexually harassed, or if they left it blank, we go talk to them and find out what the problem is. But we don't have that. Whenever they left it blank, they simply forgot to check the no mark box. So it's something we stay on top of every year.
How many women are in command positions at the Sheriff's Office right now?
There is one in a command position.
Is that adequate?
It's the best. Number one, the sergeants and lieutenants, you have to take a test. That's the Merit Commission's rules. You have to finish in the top 5 to be promoted, and then beyond that, it's an appointment by the sheriff. And currently, our number 3 in command, Captain Cheryl Williams, is an African American female that is in that position because she's the best one that was available. It's not about any race or gender. This is, we're looking for the best people. I would love to have as many women or minorities as we could. I'm always trying to promote that, and it's right now there's nobody else in position to be promoted to any command staff positions.
What are your percentages as far as minorities and women overall?
11% minorities for the office, and women, I'm sorry, I don't know the number exactly off the top of my head, but I would think that, I don't want to guess because I don't want to say the wrong number, but we don't have a lot of women that take the deputy's test or take the correctional officer test, and we try to hire as many as we can because we need a certain amount of females in every category at the sheriff's office, even in the jail, just to pat down other females. It makes it safer for us, so we're always encouraging that. I don't know what the number is off the top of my head, but we're always looking to recruit the best that we can, and females are included in that category.
Is court security, is that deputies or correctional officers or a third category?
It's a third category. It falls under the deputy's contract, but they are their own separate category.
Because, that's about half of them.
Right. 6 or 8 because we simply we don't test for that job, so we can hire, and that gives us the ability to hire women that some of them don't want to come take the test to be a deputy, but they don't mind being court security officers, so we try to hire more of them that route.
And what's the total number of officers in the sheriff's office?
63 sworn, and we have about 90 in the jail, correctional officers.
Court security?
Court security is about 11, I think.
Okay, and then our clerical, is that another?
It's about 20 civilian staff. Mm-hmm.
Yesterday, Mr. Barr said that he had this plan for patrolling the county in 3 sections instead of whatever you have now 2, or did he just evaluate what he said versus what is being done or should be done? Well,
he's terming it directed patrol. Directed patrol simply means that you put your manning where the crime is at. Our response times were studied in 2009 by DMG Maximus, and they said that our response times were incredible. That means that we're putting our staffing where the crime is at. As we said before, most of our crime comes in the unincorporated areas of Springfield. Therefore, most of our cars are assigned to unincorporated areas of Springfield. So when my opponent talks about directed patrol, I think it's a buzz term that he's trying to create something that already exists. Our assignments are proven over the years. I'm always reviewing and reflecting to see is there something we can do better to make us more efficient. If you are told that your response times are incredible, there's no need to fix that. That means you're way above the normal response times that they studied. So we are about 875 square miles in this county, and we do our best to get our deputies assigned out into the rural areas. I'm a rural resident of Sangamon County. I've been there my whole life. Sangamon County Sheriff's Office is my police force for my town. So I know what I'd like to see, but I also know that we're limited on our manpower because we're limited on our budget. And again, crime is down. Crime is down. Our response times are incredible. So what we are doing is working. And I simply think that my opponent is throwing out a buzz term because he thinks that it catches people's ear, and it's something we're already doing. It's his pattern to talk about things that we're already doing.
By the way, on the Illiopolis contract, does that mean that 20 hours a week that officer is in the town of Illiopolis?
Yes, yeah, they patrol Illiopolis, and then whatever, like Illiopolis jurisdiction, whatever is Illiopolis.
And when you and Wes were going back and forth on competing news releases last week, one of the things was about Triad, which he says is a way to outreach to seniors. You say you kind of do that. But then you said that the sheriff signed up for Triad back in like the 90s, but had forgotten about it until you reminded him, so you were doing it anyway, and he should have known it, but you didn't know it. Is that all accurate? Did I just say that right?
Well, it's something that the sheriff did. I mean, it's again.
But you weren't aware of it either, right?
No, and he was in crime prevention. He should have been the one aware of it. I mean, Wes was the one that would have been doing the outreach. Look, we will go out to any community group. I said this before. We took over and go out to any neighborhood association, church group. It's something we continued on. We don't have to put a name on it. Triad is something we certainly would go talk to them anytime. And there's things I've done, like the cyber crime tip line to help senior citizens. That's something else that they're the most vulnerable to those type of technological scams that are out there. And we gave them a way to let us know, and then we relay it out to the masses. So we continue to look after the senior citizens. It's simply a different way of doing it.
So I guess I would ask, it sounds like a lot of things are working the way you would, you're happy with the way a lot of things are working in the sheriff's office. But do you have plans for improvements or more streamlining or changes? I mean, what do you want to do?
Well, it's a double-edged sword because I'm in a position right now to make changes, and that's what we do. And I'm going to fall back on our crime rates are dropping. Our taser usage is down. Workman's comp claims are down. Everything we're doing is working right now. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to put my own personal touches on running the sheriff's office. The things I'm going to do is continue to start programs and be innovative and look for ways to help the public and keep your family safe while not costing you money. It's things like, again, the cybercrime tip line, the statesman of law enforcement. We put the concealed carry computer in the lobby for people to come out and sign up for concealed carry permits. Something else I didn't mention yet, we started a couple years ago, I was at a training with the FBI and located a computer exchange program with State Farm. We've accumulated tens of thousands of dollars of computers over the last year or so that we brought into the sheriff's office so that we didn't have to go out and buy new computers. So just simply by me being, I sit on the FBI National Academy Board for the Rail Splitters Division here in Central Illinois. And because of my training and at State Farm, I found out about this program and have saved taxpayers here all this money. That's what I'm going to continue to do. When I go out and talk to other law enforcement officials, I'll be picking their brain all the time about, what's the latest trends? What are you doing? How are you saving money? I did things like going down and getting the dog through a private donation for our canine unit. I acquired 2 bicycles through private donations so we can control the bike paths as we are increasing those in Sangamon County. That's the type of thing I'm going to do as the sheriff, and I will put my own touches on them. There's minutia in the sheriff's office that I will change around to more fit what I want to do. However, Sheriff Williamson has done a great job running the county for the last 20 years. I think the people have been very happy with him. Again, they voted him in 5 times, and he's been training me. So I have his backbone and structure of how to run things overall, but I will put my own personal twist on things and, again, continue to think outside the box and look for ways to save money while providing a service for the taxpayers here in Sangamon County.
What about recruiting? How does recruiting occur in the sheriff's office currently, and do you have any ideas for that?
I was on a recruiting trip 2 weeks ago out to UIS. Yep, Captain Williams and I went out to UIS and set up a table out there, and we just redid our recruiting brochures and and updated all the salary information and what have you. And we were out talking to people, and it's something I will continue to do. If I personally can't do it, I will delegate it to be done. We have to reach out here, especially locally. UIS, Lincoln Land, Benedictine. We also have Western Illinois University that has a great law enforcement program. We have a lot of interns that come over from Western Illinois. We will have a presence at Western also. So we're going to continue doing things like that. We started a Facebook recently that we'll be recruiting out on Facebook. That the younger kids are into the social media. It's not something that we had done in the past, but I prodded Sheriff Williamson, and we just started that up recently. So that's another way for us to get our message out.
Do you still have paper processes in the sheriff's office that could be computerized?
A couple, and actually we're working on right now on virtualizing all of our inmate jackets. And we have giant walls of every inmate that's been in our facility, which is well into the 100,000s, that are all paper files. And we got permission recently to start virtualizing them backwards. So the oldest ones will stay paper, but we'll start now, everything will be virtualized forward, and then we'll slowly start working backwards from yesterday, so to speak. So yes, we're going to continue to try to do things like that, and scan in documents and store them electronically, and on virtual servers, so we don't have to have the actual server here. And there's little things like that we're working on.
Do deputies have computers in their cars?
Every deputy has a laptop computer in a car, and they can do their reports on them, and that makes us more efficient. And the supervisors can approve them from their laptops and their cars. So we're very efficient with that type of technology. It's more of the storage of the old things that we need to work on getting rid of those.
I think you lost a deputy a while ago because she was accused of stealing a couple of plants in Sherman, and then she was acquitted in court of that, and I heard she wants her job back. What's the status of that?
We went to arbitration about 5 weeks ago, and the briefs have been sent to the arbitrator, and we will have an answer. He asked for 60 days. He told us he'd probably be done in 30 days. So I would assume sometime in the next month to month and a half we'll have an answer on that case.
Now, is that an arbitrator that makes the decision, or do you make the decision?
No, arbitrator.
Okay.
Yeah, it's binding arbitration, whatever they decide. So.
We've hit our time. I forgot to bring my phone, so I didn't have my timer going off. Is there anything you'd like to add, or do we have any final questions? Okay, is there anything you'd like to close this out with?
Well, again, I think my results are proven. With me, you don't have to wonder what type of sheriff I'm going to be. This job is in my blood. My father was a deputy here. My great-uncle Hugh Campbell was sheriff 2 different times. I grew up around listening to them talk about the Sangamon County Sheriff's Office. I have a passion for the people here. I have a passion for law enforcement. I'm a father. I'm a husband. And I want to protect your family just like I want to protect mine. Again, my results are proven. Crime rates are down across the board. We have 20% less manpower than what we had, and our workman's comp claims are down. In other words, what we're doing is working, and my opponent recently said we were the #1 law enforcement agency in the area, and I want to thank him for that because that's exactly what I've been working on my entire career. So with that, I know I'm the most qualified person for this job, and I'm asking for the endorsement today of this editorial board, and I'm asking for everybody's vote on March 18th.